Welcome back, everyone. Today we are diving into topic 7, which is co-ownership. This is all about situations where two or more people share rights in the same land. We will unpack the differences between joint tenancy and tenancy in common, how courts resolve these disputes, and the impact of cases you must know. So let's get started. Here is why this matters in practice. Co-ownership is extremely common in family, business, and investment property. We will cover what co-ownership means, how it's created, how presumptions work, what happens if a joint tenancy is severed, and finally how disputes over partition and sale are resolved. Co-ownership simply means two or more people hold rights in the same land. Each had an equal right to possess the whole property, but the law recognizes only two forms: one, joint tenancy, and tenancy in common. Understanding the difference is very crucial. Joint tenancy is about unity. Each joint tenant doesn't own a distinct slice, but the whole interest together. As Blackstone described, it's an intimate union of rights. To create it, the four unities: title, time, interest, and possession must all be present. If they are missing, we don't get a joint tenancy. A tenancy in common means each co-owner has their own distinct share of the property, even though the land is not physically divided. The key point is that there is no right of survivorship. If one owner dies, their share passes under their will, not to the other owner. By contrast, joint tenancy requires the four unities of time, title, interest, and possession. If those unities aren't all present, the law presumes a tenancy in common, as confirmed in Williams versus Hansman. I highly urge you to read through this case for better understanding. Notice how survivorship works. If one tenant dies, their interest passes to the survivors automatically. But the forfeiture rule stops unfair outcomes. For example, someone cannot inherit if they killed the other co-owner. In Cleaver, this principle was set. In Stone, a constructive trust was used to enforce the forfeiture rule. When courts ask, was this a joint tenancy or tenancy in common, they look at intention. If unclear, the presumption is joint tenancy. In Public Trustee versus Feifel, the court confirmed this too. Victorian law also has a statutory presumption of joint tenancy unless there is evidence of contrary intention. Now let's talk about equity's role in co-ownership. Sometimes the law presumes a joint tenancy, but equity will step in and treat it as a tenancy in common instead. For example, if two people contribute unequal amounts to buy a property, it wouldn't be fair to call that a joint tenancy. So equity presumes tenancy in common. We also see this where land is held under a partnership or by mortgages. A good case to illustrate this is Malayan Credit versus Jack Chia. In that case, the parties were in business together and held the property in unequal shares. So, the court said it was a tenancy in common. But notice the contrast with family homes. In domestic settings, the court usually assumes the parties intended survivorship. In fact, in the Cummins case, the High Court said marriage itself strongly supports a joint tenancy. So the context really matters. When disputes arise, tribunals like VCAT step in. If someone is wrongly excluded, they can claim occupation rent, as in Pascoe versus Swan. If improvements are made, cost can be offset against rents, as in Brickwood versus Young. And if one collects rent from third parties, they must account fairly. Fargyard versus Shanahan confirms this. I highly urge you to read through cases at your own time for better understanding. Let's look at severance of a joint tenancy. Severance simply means that the joint tenancy is broken and what you are left with is a tenancy in common. There are three main ways this can happen. That is by alienation, by lease, or by agreement. Now, alienation is when a co-owner transfers their interest to someone else. In Correns versus Patton, the High Court said that for alienation to be effective, the joint tenant must have done everything possible to complete the transfer. Another way is through agreement. In Burgess versus Rumsley, the court accepted that even an implied agreement could sever the joint tenancy. But be careful here. Once a transfer is formally registered, that registration will override any prior agreement not to sever. That was made clear in Padden versus Anderson. So, the key takeaway is that joint tenancies can be severed quite easily, and once that happens, the right of survivorship disappears. Finally, partition or sale. If co-owners can't agree, legislation allows a court or tribunal like VCAT to order a partition or sale. This ensures deadlocks are broken and each co-owner receives fair recognition of their share. That wraps up our session on co-ownership. We have looked at joint tenancy, tenancy in common, presumptions, disputes, severance, and partition. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you in the next lesson. Good luck.